Even you, Master of the Knights of Ren, have never faced such a test.
The Knights of Ren remained a mystery even after the release of The Rise of Skywalker. However, just because the movie is over does not mean that the Knights of Ren play an unimportant role in the Star Wars universe, and they may yet play an even bigger role in upcoming releases. So today we're here to ask, what do we know about the Knights of Ren? Who is this clandestine society? Where do they come from, and what are their goals? Today we're taking a look at this dark faction and attempting to understand who are the Knights of Ren. This week we got the release of the second issue in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic series. The issue opens with Ben Solo and Snoke on board Snoke's orbital greenhouse thing. Snoke explains the station was built to hold back the darkness, meant to be an oasis of light in the midst of dark. Snoke uses this as an opportunity to talk about denying one's true and dark nature, saying that when we deny our true nature, that is the darkness consumes us and we are destroyed. They continue their conversation from the last comic, explaining that Ben Solo wants to seek out the Knights of Ren. Snoke suggests that Ben Solo should consider a new name, since having a name associated with both Ben Kenobi, the famous Jedi, and Han Solo, the great Rebel Alliance general, would not be welcomed among the Knights of Ren. Ben suggests that there was a name that he came up with as a child, and while he's initially reluctant to share that name, Snoke encourages him, saying that it is in our childhood that we are most in touch with our truest selves, and that the name we take on when we embrace the darkness is not our birth name, but our true name. He explains that he was not born Snoke, but that he took on that name when he embraced the darkness, leading us to wonder, since we know that he was a pawn of Palpatine, who was Snoke originally? We then cut to a flashback of Luke, Lor San Tekka, and young Ben Solo flying off in hunt of an ancient Jedi outpost.
Look how old you've become.
Something far worse has happened to you.
An interesting fact is that the ship they are flying off in is, in fact, the same ship we saw in the last issue, flown by the other Jedi trainees as they pursued Ben Solo from the temple. The group is flying far beyond the Outer Rim, to the border of the unknown regions, to a planet called Elphrona, in search of an ancient Jedi outpost. We learn from Luke that it is not common for the Jedi to build outposts so far from the core worlds, but Lor San Tekka tells us that the Jedi actually expanded quite heavily during the era of the High Republic. The High Republic is a new term to us Star Wars fans and refers to an era sometime between the era of the Old Republic and the times we see covered in the prequel films. We've had confirmed recently that we will be getting some content that will take place during the High Republic, some 700 years before the events of Phantom Menace. Ben Solo communicates to who he believes is Snoke, although we aren't told for certain if it's Snoke or Palpatine in his mind, but he's communicating to him seemingly in his mind through the Force. In this conversation, Ben Solo tells the voice where they are going, which may explain who is waiting for them when they arrive. When the group gets to the outpost, they find an ancient Jedi temple hidden in the caves underground. Inside, we can see many artifacts, including Jedi and Sith holocrons. It is here, however, that the Knights of Ren are waiting for them. The leader of the group calls himself Ren. We know from the visual dictionary that the Knights of Ren originate from folklore deep in the unknown regions and have existed as legends for centuries. The scattered settlements of the unknown regions and adjacent border territories tell cautionary tales of dangers lurking in unmapped space. Local folklore has warned for centuries of marauders known as the Knights of Ren. Since the rise of the First Order, myth has become reality. Whether or not this gang of dark warriors are truly connected to that ancient tradition or are simply wrapping themselves in the name and reputation of legends is not known, nor consequential. For whatever their origins, they are a force to be reckoned with. The Knights of Ren were gifted to Ben Solo by Snoke, who promised the fallen Jedi apprentice powerful followers if he proved worthy. After a grueling trial, Kylo Ren emerged to lead them. Because of this, we can reasonably assume that even though the leader of the Knights of Ren calls himself Ren, this is likely not his given name. More likely, he is following what Snoke says earlier in the comics, that when you embrace the darkness within, you take on your true name. Since both the current leader and later Ben Solo would take on the name Ren, it does seem likely that the leader of the Knights adopts the name Ren as their own name, similar to how the leader of the Mandalorians would adopt the name Mandalore as if it was their first name. The leader of the Knights of Ren, being the only one of the group to wield a lightsaber, activates his red blade, threatening Luke and his young nephew. Luke responds by activating his green lightsaber and moves to defend Lor San Tekka and Ben Solo. Luke takes on the entire group even though he's outnumbered. He says, "I may be one man, but I am not alone. The Force is my ally, and it is powerful."
For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is.
He tells them that they are clumsy and untrained, and they use the dark side like a hammer, but the light side is like a blade. And so is he. This comment about the precision of his ways versus the clumsiness of the Knights of Ren further emphasizes their lack of training and the way they simply seek out raw ability. We see from the first comic that it is a requirement of the Knights of Ren that all members be Force sensitive. Although the visual dictionary also confirms that while Force sensitive and able to command the Force, they are not necessarily trained in the Force, nor does training in the Force seem to be a part of their culture. Unlike the Sith, the Knights of Ren and Snoke don't seem to want the dark side for the purpose of gaining power, but are more focused on embracing true nature. It's less about becoming as strong or as powerful as you can be, and more about owning up to what you are deep down. And this argument for natural depravity is seen early in the comic by Snoke, and then later by the Knights of Ren themselves. In the end, Luke destroys their weapons with the Force, and the Knights of Ren issue a retreat, but not before their leader removes his helmet and tells Ben Solo to seek out the Knights if he ever decides to embrace the darkness within him. The comic flashes back to the present where Ben Solo is back on Elphora and finds the helmet of Ren, putting it on and communicating with him through the Force. However, just as he does that, and before we can get any real answers, the trio of Jedi that had hunted Ben from the Jedi Temple arrive and confront Ben Solo. Since we already know that Kylo Ren becomes the leader of the Knights of Ren, and their lightsaber-wielding leader is the only one not present in the films or visual dictionary, it seems pretty reasonable to assume that Ben Solo kills their former leader and takes on the name Ren, along with his own true name, Kylo. One of the most interesting things revealed in this comic is the Jedi outpost on Elphora. The planet of Elphora is said to be out deep in the Outer Rim, bordering on the unknown regions. We also know that the Knights of Ren themselves hail from the unknown regions. Since we are told that this temple was built during the era of the High Republic, and we see that this temple is within the reach of the Knights of Ren, I'm beginning to wonder if they're setting up the ancient Knights of Ren as potential antagonists for the new High Republic content we're going to be getting soon. Since we're continuing to get new information about the Knights of Ren even after the release of Rise of Skywalker, this seems to possibly suggest to me that their role in the Star Wars universe is not yet over. But I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you guys think the Knights of Ren are done, or will we be seeing more about their ancient heritage in the upcoming films and series? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, may the lore be with you. Always.
You assumed no Force could challenge you. And now